Hello, my name is Rebecca Clapcourt and I'm the founder of Awesome Archie, a non-profit organisation that has been created to support families and mainstream schools when it comes to caring for their children with neurological differences. This teacher training resource has been created specifically for mainstream Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 support workers, and we're going to be discussing pathological demand avoidance, which falls under the umbrella of autism. Before we start, I have to acknowledge the help that I've had in creating this video, and that is by the support of the phenomenal authors of the books in which I refer to. We at Awesome Archie would recommend all of these books for you to keep in your school staff library because they are a phenomenal resource to return to when you're stuck. These books are The Autistic Brain by Temple Grandin, Laura Kirby's The Educator's Experience of Pathological Demand Avoidance, Claire Truman, The Teacher's Introduction to Pathological Demand Avoidance, Your Child is Not Broken by Heidi Mayveer, and lastly, and what I believe to be the most beneficial when we're supporting our children in Key Stage 1 and 2, is The Panda on PDA by Gloria Duravilla. So, let's get started. First of all, we're going to go right back to basics. What is autism? Autism is a developmental neurological condition that affects hundreds of thousands of people across the UK. It's important to know that even though when you have a diagnosis of autism, there will have been a number of similarities to have got you that official diagnosis, that's where the similarities end. Every child with autism is completely unique and different to the next. That's why supporting a child with autism is phenomenally difficult unless you know the child. Children with autism will struggle with communication. And the earliest sign of autism is often the difference in the way that language develops. Some children are delayed in starting to speak, or others may babble or use single words before regressing and sometimes losing their skills altogether. Some children may never learn to speak at all. But in the mainstream environment, often these children leave us by the time they reach year 1 to a more specialist provision. And we tend to see children that struggle in other ways, like with their abilities in social interaction. Children on the autism spectrum may just be interested in socialising in a different way. They may want to make friends, but struggle to do so. Some children with autism are socially withdrawn and will completely avoid mixing with other children. It can also be really hard for us as staff members to read the mood or the internal state of a child with autism. They can, on the outside, appear very happy, but then all of a sudden can change to extremely upset or even head into meltdown. Lots of children with autism, including my son, constantly appear neutral. And unless he's extremely excited or terribly afraid, really his face remains the same throughout. It's really common for children with autism to only really value or see their own point of view. And I know as staff members this can be extraordinarily frustrating. But it isn't their fault. They truly believe that on occasion they are treated unjustly. Children with autism will often respond negatively to changes in environment or routine. An extreme emotional outburst can be triggered by your pens being changed or the toys being moved unexpectedly. Different foods making contact with another item of food on the same plate or roadworks on the way to school can really affect the way the child has their school day moving forward. Sensory sensitivities can also contribute to this behaviour. Lots of children with autism are adverse to certain noises or smells or lights, tastes and textures, and their diet may be restricted to safe or predictable food. Hectic or crowded places can feel extremely overwhelming, and some children on the autism spectrum actively seek out sensory experiences, like going under a table or hanging upside down for a tree, even though they've been told multiple times that that's not safe to do so. All of the things that I've discussed with you are autism in its most basic form. But there is a type of autism that is far more complex than what we have discussed. And that is a neurological difference that falls under the autism umbrella, known as PDA, pathological demand avoidance. For this, I'm going to be referring to the book, The Panda on PDA, written by Gloria Duranvilla, who is a paediatric doctor who specialises in PDA. In this amazing book, the author refers to children with autism as bears. She says that bears are the autistic family of the animal kingdom. They have many wonderful qualities. They enjoy being alone at times. They can be very independent. They're fiercely loyal to their families and are peaceful unless they're annoyed. And they also get a huge amount of pleasure from their senses. She tells us that there is great diversity among autistic people, just like within a group of bears. We have polar bears, brown bears, black bears, and they all have so many things in common, but they're all exceptionally different. And that's what this book is designed to help us understand. Gloria Duranvilla explains that children with PDA are known as the pandas of the bear group. They're a particularly amazing bunch, but they have a particular style of autism. PDA is the name of the panda's unique place on the autism spectrum. Children with PDA have lots of things in common, but as with all children with autism, they are all unique and different. When a child with PDA feels safe, they're peaceful, they're charming. You can hold a really eloquent conversation. But when a child with PDA starts to feel like they're being pushed, their anxiety levels rise and their personality changes before you can even blink an eye. I know that when working in a classroom, this can present as a child who has been spoilt at home or is just used to getting their own way. But particularly when we have our Key Stage 2 children, we know that actually this behaviour is very, very rare to come from a parenting style or choice, and actually that it's more to do with the child's neurological difference. The difficulty we have as mainstream staff members is the same countrywide. To be honest, all children with PDA would benefit from having a one-to-one and the additional funding. But we know that in the current climate, that is simply not going to happen. So I'm hoping that a few of the strategies that I've learned along my way that I can share with you will help us not only get through the school day with less meltdowns, but also encourage our amazing PDA pupil to have a go at things that they may not otherwise want to. Children with PDA will thrive and lead happy and fun lives if the environment is right. It's counterintuitive for us as teaching staff to allow our child with PDA to have freedom. It goes against everything we think we know as teachers. But for a child with PDA to be able to learn, they have to have the ability to have choice. We as staff need to be as flexible as is safely possible. And if that means giving the child an option to dip out of a Times Table Rockstars lesson to just take a quiet moment somewhere else, then that's what we need to do. Obviously, it's not ideal. And in a wonderful world, we would all be sitting in a classroom together doing exactly as we're told. But PDA and lots of children with autism don't work in that way. Some simple tips to help. Try not to make demands when a child is already anxious. Only ask of them if you can see they're in a positive frame of mind. Try not to rush. Talk in a clear and calm way that they can understand. Create a safe space, a quiet zone, whatever you want to call it, for your child with PDA to go when things get too much, and they will get too much. We're not going to be able to stop those meltdowns, but we're hoping that we can reduce them and come out of them at speed. Make learning as exciting and as flexible as possible. If you know your pupils' strengths, use them so that they can do a piece of work that you know they may otherwise not enjoy. And if we can, try and let your pupil with PDA have a say in the day's plans. Again, I know it sounds counterintuitive to ask a child how they should be teaching a school day, but by allowing that little bit of freedom in just their own learning can mean in the end you win. You're getting that child to learn when otherwise maybe you wouldn't have done. So quietly, you're victorious anyway. Adapting detailed instructions to reduce demand. When working with autistic children and young people, we're used to the need for really clear instructions. If you're working with a group of autistic students, one of whom has PDA, it's likely that you're going to need to provide clear instructions for the whole group in order to meet the need of most of your students. But it's important to be aware that for your student with PDA, this could feel like a long list of immovable demands, and that is really likely to cause them anxiety and end in a meltdown for them. Instead of saying, right, let's do maths, your TA or one-to-one could approach the child with PDA and say, gosh, you've done a fantastic job there. I think it's about time that I got the laptop out for us to do some maths. Can you help me? Really, you're telling the child that they're about to do maths, but they feel like they have a choice. And if they say no, which they will occasionally, you continue to log on, you continue to start their maths and make out that you're having the best time ever and that it's them missing out. They'll soon come around. Altering activities depending on the child's mood. If you can see that your pupil with PDA is having a difficult day, then anything involving things that they don't want to do is going to end badly. It's perfectly okay to let that child do something that you know they enjoy. But it is important that we have open and honest conversations with the class as to why some children have different needs and therefore have to be treated differently. This is something that needs to be conversed with parents and carers beforehand, but in my experience, an open and honest conversation about differences helps other children to understand. I always use the analogy that we wouldn't expect a child in a wheelchair to stand up and kick a football. There is no difference for our expectations for children with neurological difference. It's just harder for us to notice as we can't see anything different from the outside. And lastly, what do we do when we get into a meltdown situation? To be honest, this is a difficult one to answer because it does vary from child to child. But for most cases, I always say allowing a child to vent their frustrations, to sit out for a few minutes, to cry or be angry, as long as they are safe and not hurting themselves or others, the best thing to do is to leave them be. It's also really important to validate to them that you understand why they're feeling like they do, and that the situation isn't ideal and it would be so much better if they were able to rejoin the rest of the class and do the work that has been set. But you understand that this is a difficult moment for them and that you are prepared to give them time. This is where a great relationship with the parent is always really helpful, because any work that is missed during these moments can then just be printed off in a home learning book and sent home. The interesting thing about looking after children with autism, and particularly those with PDA, is that sometimes just offering the simplest of choices can keep them on track. For example, if you're having an English lesson where you know your child is not going to be happy doing some writing, why not change it up and say to that child, listen, instead of writing with the boring handwriting pen, why don't we write every other word in a different colour and make a beautiful rainbow piece of writing? Or how would you feel about putting a sticker at the end of each sentence if you managed to write nicely? Giving them a choice can be the thing that reduces their anxiety and keeps them on an even keel. We hope you've enjoyed this video. Please follow us on all of our socials for updated hints and tips. Our website, www.awesomearchie.co.uk, also provides regular updates of what we're doing in the way of working with charities and schools across Dorset and Hampshire. And follow us on TikTok for daily updates, hints and tips. Thanks for watching.